Welcome back to CineWrap. Today, we present to you a French film that is based on a true story, brimming with both value and humor. It holds the 79th position among the world's top 250 films and has earned an IMDb rating of 8.5 in the categories of comedy, drama, and biology. So let's move on to the story. Movie titled, The Untouchables. Driss is taking his boss Philippe for a drive across Paris late one evening. When sitting in traffic becomes too monotonous, Driss accelerates over the posted speed limit, swerving around other vehicles and disregarding stop signs. The police follow him as a result, and Driss wager €100 that he can lose them. However, after he drives beneath a bridge, the police ambush them from both sides to catch up. Despite his apparent lack of concern, Driss places a €200 wager that he can provide them with an escort this time. When the police force him to exit the vehicle, he becomes hostile, claiming as though Philippe is immobile and that he is being taken to the hospital. The wheelchair that the officers discover in the truck and Philippe's acting out convulsions when they approach him serve as evidence of this. The police offer to escort Driss to the hospital and pardon him for exceeding the speed limit because it's an emergency. Driss plays song to celebrate winning the bet. And as soon as the police leave, he and Philippe share a cigarette at their destination. Just before the medical staff might discover them, Driss drives them away, promising to handle the situation. This friendship dates back a couple of months. In an attempt to find a new caregiver for him, Philippe and his assistant Magali are conducting interviews. However, things aren't going well because every applicant has extremely formulaic or uncomfortable responses to their interview questions. They are taken aback, however, when Driss comes in and demands to sign some documents stating that they won't hire him in order to receive unemployment benefits, despite the fact that it isn't nearly his time yet. He is frank and a touch impolite, even making advances toward Magali, but Philippe finds him funny and invites him to return the next day to get his signed paperwork. Returning to his modest neighborhood house, Driss tries to take a bath while his younger siblings pester him. Only his older and more responsible sister Mina helps him finish in time for the bath. He watches his brother Adama get out of a strange automobile via the window while he waits for their mother to come. Driss is even more certain that the child is up to no good when he enters the flat, simply saying he was at school and then walking out again with his bag in tow. When his mother arrives in the evening, he gives her a stolen Faberge egg and replies that he has been on vacation when she inquires. However, she isn't glad to see him because, after going missing for 6 months without making contact, he has suddenly appeared as though her house were a hotel. She warns him not to return, kicking him out since she's had enough of his lies and has to tend to her other children. Driss spends the evening with some friends from the neighborhood, enjoying some food and a smoke. When Driss returns to Philippe's house the following day to pick up his paperwork, Yvonne, the housekeeper, greets him and gives him a tour of the property as well as an update on Philippe's daily activities. She also shows him the room he would have all to himself, complete with its own bathroom. Driss is pulled to visit Philippe because he can't stop staring at the bathtub. Philippe offers Driss a job opportunity in addition to the signed sheet of paper. Philippe tells Driss he wagers he won't make it through the first 2 weeks when he accepts the 1-month trial. Following his rooming in, Driss receives training on how to look after Philippe. He has to be taught how to transfer himself into a wheelchair, keep his legs moving, and assist with bathing and dressing. When Driss finds out he has to clean his, but after Philippe uses the restroom and put on some high stockings, things get unpleasant. Despite his protests and refusals to perform these tasks, Driss eventually accepts them as part of his work. Later in the evening, Elisa, Philippe's daughter, and her boyfriend Bastien interrupt him while he's having a snack on the roof. They're seeking for a quiet place to make out, so he kicks them out for not sharing his drink. Even though initially he makes some mistakes he learns from, like giving Philippe the phone instead of putting it to his ear or forgetting the baby monitor while taking a bath, Driss rapidly adjusts to the daily routine with Philippe. Additionally, he learns how to arrange his mail into various folders. He reads the majority of the letters for Philippe, but some are private, and he isn't permitted to view them. Rather than discarding the flyer as Philippe suggests, he chooses to create a file specifically for individuals who advertise female prostitutes. But despite everything, Driss still makes time for fun. He persistently tries to make out with Magali, but to no avail, and occasionally he calls escorts to join him in bed. When Yvonne visits his room one morning to chastise him for being late, she discovers some potentially lethal weapons in his suitcase. However, she chooses not to address the discovery just yet. Driss's job today is to transport Philippe around, but instead of loading him up in the back of a van like cargo, he takes him in one of the fancy, seldom used automobiles. Though Yvonne still disapproves, Philippe, who initially believes this is inappropriate and that they should be practical, quickly becomes enthused by the prospect of a quicker, more exciting trip. A neighbor is parked at their entry, disobeying the sign on the door prohibiting them from leaving the building when they try. Without any delay, Driss pursues the man, grabbing hold of his shirt front and threatening to hurt him unless he moves the car. His acts impress Philippe, but once again, Yvonne is not happy of them. The pair goes to a museum, where Philippe is planning to buy a piece of artwork that Driss considers not worth the money because it's just a red blotch on the canvas. Later, Philippe meets with a relative who informs him that Driss' violent tendencies are causing concern for everyone. Additionally, he has learned that he has a criminal history, but Philippe doesn't care because he enjoys making jokes with Driss and doesn't feel sorry for him. Driss has dinner with Yvonne in the kitchen while listening to Philippe dictate a letter to Magali following yet another failed attempt at making out with her. Yvonne switches off the baby monitor, saying it's a private talk, and explains what's happening. These are the letters Philippe refused to let Driss open. Philippe is pen friends with a woman named Eleanor. However, their relationship is solely epistolary. He has never really met Eleanor. When it comes to love, Driss makes fun of Yvonne for the constant glances the gardener gives her right before bed. As he tries to fall asleep, he hears strange noises emanating from the baby monitor. Philippe is struggling to breathe. Driss, unable to ignore him no matter how hard he tries, walks to his room and uses a moist cloth to clean his face and comforting words to help him through the onslaught. After a while, Philippe nods off, but a few moments later he wakes up again and says he needs air. This time Driss doesn't hesitate. He puts Philippe on the wheelchair, covers him with blankets, and takes him out for a stroll by the river. For the first time in a long time, Philippe sees Paris at night. Feeling more at ease today, he tells Driss that the medication can only treat so much and that he occasionally feels phantom agony. Philippe also admits that, due to his circumstances, he is unable to satisfy a lady, but that he may still feel some satisfaction from having his ears massaged because they are sensitive areas when they see some girls passing by. Philippe, who is initially dubious but eventually warms to the idea, shares one of Driss's joints with him when the ghostly pain returns. Afterward, they go to a restaurant, where they joke around while sharing a meal, and Philippe decides to share more of his story. He had met his wife while they were still students, and not long after their marriage, she suffered 5 miscarriages and received a terminal sickness diagnosis. That's when they adopted Elisa. Paragliding gave Philippe the speed, competitions, and extreme activities he has always liked. He broke his vertebrae in a paragliding accident due to bad weather, yet he still believes that living without his spouse is his true disability rather than the chair. After some more light-hearted conversation, Philippe recalls the date and learns that Driss has successfully completed his 1-month trial, making him an official hiring. To begin with, though, he must return the stolen Faberge egg to his wife. She used to give him one every year, and he now has precisely 25. Marking the length of their marriage. When Driss visits Mina the following day as she is leaving school, she informs him about some police officers who have been contacting their house. Mina is a little miffed that he hasn't been responding to her messages other than asking her to find the egg. Afterward, he visits Adama, who confesses he was found with 30 grams on him. Adama declines Driss's invitation to lunch and boards the same dubious-looking vehicle as before. Later, Driss is permitted to stay as Philippe dictates to Magali his letter on behalf of Eleanor. He finds Philippe's purple prose to be extremely dull and feels that he should be more direct. He finds it hard to believe that 6 months have passed and they have never exchanged images. He phones her after seeing her phone number on one of the letters, which forces Philippe to pick up the phone and finally speak to her outside of written communication. Philippe and Driss have such a great chat that he ends up talking to her on the phone all the time. Before they go to the opera, Driss teases Philippe by laughing at the outfits. The following day, Driss persuades Philippe to agree to swap photos with Eleanor, selecting a photo of him using a wheelchair. Later, as he's painting, Elisa barges into his room demanding cigarettes and mocking him for attempting to be creative. He gets upset and throws her out before going to visit Philippe, who is requesting that Yvonne swap out the selected photo of him with one from when he wasn't quadriplegic. Just before Driss storms in, raving about Elisa and telling Philippe he needs to reprimand her, a point Yvonne concurs with, she hides the photo within the escort file. Philippe agrees to talk to her, but he's mostly surprised when Driss lets it slip that he's been painting. Days go by, and Philippe and Driss' friendship gets stronger every day. Philippe gets him his first outfit and chastises his daughter, while Driss listens to him on the baby monitor. Driss also takes him to play in the snow and goes for runs with him. Driss shows Magali his finished painting, but she slaps him when he tries to kiss her. Philippe, however, likes the painting and promises he'll try to sell it. Enjoying things like sharing joints, hiring escorts together, and purchasing a quicker car, the two of them have a terrific time together. When Philippe's birthday comes, he isn't very excited about it. Every year on this date, he has to meet with all these relatives who come to see him merely to make sure he's still alive, and he appears to be startled that they're having a party. Philippe says it'll all be rather boring, while he and the guests enjoy some live classical music. Driss goes in search of Elisa, who is crying in her room after taking some of Yvonne's pills, which don't kill her as she thought they would. She requests Driss to speak with Bastien, who agrees to do so on the condition that he pay her a fee, because she is upset that he broke up with her and called her a tart. In the meantime, Philippe persuades a relative to purchase Driss' artwork for 11,000 euros by showcasing it to him. Returning to the dining room, Driss strikes up a conversation with Yvonne, who informs him that Magali is seeing someone named Fred, though things are a little difficult right now. This gives Driss optimism. Philippe makes Driss listen to some of the most significant songs in the history of classical music as the party starts to wind down, but all he can do is laugh. He brings his iPod and plays Boogie Wonderland by Earth, Wind and Fire. Once the band has finished playing, then he starts dancing in the center of the floor. Philippe adores seeing him dance because he's such a great dancer and even gets the other guests to join him. Later, Driss reads Philippe's most recent letter from Eleanor as he puts him to bed. She tells him they should meet when she visits Paris next week and sends him a photo of herself, which reveals she's really attractive. On the day of the date, Philippe is dressed in numerous ways by Yvonne and Driss until they discover the ideal one. Driss takes use of his day off to visit Bastien, and since Yvonne is the one who will be taking Philippe on the date, he threatens him until he agrees to bring Eliza croissants every day and apologize to her. He also asks him to fix his hair. After that, he pays his mother a visit at work, but he merely observes her. Eleanor is running quite late, so Yvonne and Philippe are waiting for her at the restaurant. Philippe gives up after an hour of waiting, contacts Driss to request that he take him away, and then departs the restaurant without realizing Eleanor is also arriving at that moment. Driss is ecstatic when Philippe offers him the money he received for selling the photo and brings him along in his private jet that same evening. The following morning, after arriving in the countryside, Philippe decides to go paragliding and takes Driss along. Despite his initial fear, Driss comes to appreciate the experience even if he doesn't want anything to do with it. Adama receives a reprimand after Driss notices the scars on his face while he is waiting for him at home. But since Adama still won't tell Driss what's going on in his life, Driss orders Adama to wait in his room while he contacts Mina to reassure her and gets Philippe ready for bed. Philippe, however, isn't sleepy yet. He asks Driss about his family after forcing him to gaze at a painting alongside him. At first, Driss is reluctant to talk about it, but finally gives in. As it happens, Adama's parents are actually his aunt and uncle and aren't. strictly speaking, his brother. His original name is Bakari Baysari, but since other children had the same name, they nicknamed him Idris, which eventually became Driss. They brought him back from Senegal when he was 8 years old since they were unable to conceive. His aunt mysteriously became pregnant one day, and more men and children followed following his uncle's death. Philippe points out that Adama needs discipline, much as Driss had spoken with him with Elisa. As a result, he fires Driss to make time for his family, realizing that he cannot spend his entire life caring for an elderly man. The following morning, Driss packs his bags and gets ready to go after Bastien, sporting a more presentable hairstyle, brings his daily croissant. When Driss tries to make a final attempt at flirting with Magali, she introduces him to his significant other Fred, which is short for Frederic. It turns out that Magali isn't interested in men, so Driss gives up right away. As he leaves the house, he returns the baby monitor to Yvonne and makes fun of her for lying to him about Magali in order to get even with him. When she hands him back the escort file he created, he is disappointed to see his selected picture locked away. Driss throws away the file, but he keeps the photo for himself. Even though he no longer works there, he asks the man to move away when he gets outside and discovers that the automobile is once more obstructing the entry. Driss responds that Adama calling him out on it is just a matter of principle. After a few hours, the two boys walk to the station to pick up their mother. Back at the house, Philippe is eating his first supper with his new caregiver, who is stuffy and uninteresting, and he chooses to leave him before he even finishes his meal. No one is around to chastise him because Yvonne is out on a date with the gardener. As days pass, Driss goes back to his old life. He orders the folks in the suspicious automobile to stop bothering Adama and goes back to hanging out with his old friends. He calls himself pragmatic and uses all the art knowledge he learned while working for Philippe to impress the employer at an interview even though he lacks the necessary expertise. This lands him a job as a driver. Philippe is constantly in a foul temper and still doesn't like his new caregiver. When he becomes resistant to anyone in the house helping him with his imaginary pain one night, Yvonne phones Driss and requests that he visit. That's how the issue starts out for them, with the police pursuing them first and then accompanying them to the hospital. Following that little experience, Philippe is driven to the coast by Driss, where the sight of the ocean aids in his relaxation. Later, after tending to Philippe's overgrown beard, Driss brings him to a restaurant for lunch, but he doesn't stay long because Philippe will be spending the day with someone else. Before departing, Driss wishes him luck and finally returns his egg to him. Philippe begins to worry about being alone until he spots Eleanor, his date, who is overjoyed to see him and doesn't seem to mind the chair at all. The actual Count Philippe Pozo di Borgo is currently a resident of Morocco. He has 2 daughters from a previous marriage. The real Driss, whose true name is Abdul Yasmin Sellu, owns his own business, is married, and has 3 kids. Even now, the 2 men remain extremely good friends.